Hello, this is Dr. Karen Midyet, and I am here with my esteemed guest, Connie Baher. Did I say that right?
Baher.
Okay. Baher. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
that'll work.
no one
Either.
can get my name right either.
I would
Um,
think.
so, so we are here today talking about caregiving and some strategies to help you cope and understand why you are feeling so much struggle and stress if you are a caregiver, and to prepare you in case you ever get into that role, because a lot of times people do. It's not a role that people usually choose, but it is one that oftentimes happens to us as we are aging and as our family members continue to age with us. So I'm a clinical psychologist and a coach. I call myself an aging, retirement, and caring coach. And I've been a clinical psychologist for 45 years. And I have a practice in mental health and coaching. And I've been doing this with older adults. I've specialized for the last 12 to 13 years. And it has been an honor to have Connie here with me today. She has written a book called Family Caregivers: An Emotional Survival Guide. And I have that here somewhere, but I'll show it to you later. And we are going to look at all her experiences that she's had, because she is a writer and speaker on caregiving and life transitions. And she has written articles for Nextdoor, on a number of caregiver articles, on stress busters, as well as New Year's resolutions for family caregivers. So she's got a tremendous amount of written experience, but more than that, she has a lot of personal experience with being a caregiver, and she can tell you about that. And so I think we have a unique presentation today because we're doing it from two perspectives. One, from me as a professional who works with clients and and coachees, and you, Connie, from your own personal experience from being a caregiver for your mom, as well as then taking that and doing other things, which you can talk about. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and if you can tell us a little bit more about how you got involved in all of that, that would be great, a great context.
Sure. I was the caregiver for my mom for 13 years. And as Karen says, it, I just sort of fell into it. And as I think many of you who are watching us today maybe have found, is it starts out with something very small, like, Mom, I'll help you with the groceries. And the next thing you know, you're filling the prescriptions. And the next thing you know, it's time to move into an assisted care facility, and on and on. And the role grows. So over the 13 years, the role was growing. It was taking over more and more of my life. I had a business career. I was a executive in a couple of tech companies, and I was doing all sorts of stuff. And then suddenly this caregiving thing begins to take over my life. And I didn't know how I was going to make my way through it. So what I started, it came to me because I've written articles on various topics all my life. And I said, okay, what I got to do is I got to write about this. And what I set out to do was to talk with two kinds of people: other caregivers, to see what sort of accumulated wisdom, sort of crowdsourcing, what they could tell me about being a caregiver. And the second group was people like Karen, the professionals, psychologists, psychotherapists, hospice workers, palliative care doctors, people who had guided so many caregivers through this journey. And so the book that I wrote was a compilation of all of that, a sort of a dialogue between the caregivers and the counselors, because I really wanted to allow us to let our voices come out. So let me sort of pause there. Does that give you enough of a kind of a background?
Yes, I think that's great. So that's the context for today. And when we think about it, the caregiving, you did it for your mom. A lot of times it can be for a spouse or sometimes even adult children. A lot of times I have been the psychologist for parents who have adult children with MS or some sort of physical disability. A lot of the press gives a lot of attention to caregiving for dementia, and so that is probably some of the harder caregiving experiences for people, but it is hard for everyone who is dealing with caregiving as the responsibilities get bigger over time. And then you also have, the family dynamics that are a part of it. And so because of my background as a psychologist, many times I work on trying to heal a relationship or relationships with families during this process. And sometimes I'm only seeing one part of the process. I'm only working with my client, but my client can have through coaching can get a lot of ways of working with their loved one so that they can work on healing a maybe a rift in their relationship or difficult dynamics. And that is another topic for another day. But that is one of the things that I do as a psychologist and coach, in addition to helping them deal with the day-to-day stressors of being a caregiver. And I think one of my biggest wins is when I can help clients heal those relationships before someone passes away. And I have been able to do that. And I will tell you, there is nothing better than that. So, um, and,
Yeah,
when I was,
I'd like to.
Mhm. No, you
I
can
was
go.
just going to say, I'd like to just, yeah, let me just reinforce that because um, one of the people that I talked to, and I quote in the book at some length, is a woman. We really were talking about anger and how much anger she felt every time she visited with her mother. And so the general topic was anger and old wounds. And just to absolutely to
Mm,
reinforce what you just said, I asked a lot of the counselors, I said, what do you do with that? Because some of us are blessed with having had a good relationship before the caregiving starts, whether it's with a spouse or a parent or what have you. Others, not so much. There can be so much baggage. And I said, what do you do? Do you try to work through those things or not? And one of the key issues was you can try to work through them if you have support, if you have
mm,
somebody like Carol, if you have someone who can help you work your way through the old problems and yes, come to healing. Some people are not that lucky to have somebody, but absolutely, I think what you said is the key. Is this is a time when we need, and maybe we'll return to this point later, but this is a time when we need support of all kinds.
mhm. So why don't you talk a little bit about the job? Because,
Okay.
you have a wonderful way of describing it, and then we can go from here.
Okay. Well, I started the book out with a sort of a conceit that this is a job description. And so here's the job posting for the job of family caregiver. And then this is how it goes: hours, part time initially, expanding to 24/7. Pay, none. Training provided, none. Length of employment, unknown, can extend to over a decade. Working environment, challenging. Responsibilities, just about everything. You will be coordinating and overseeing medical, financial, legal, housing, transportation, daily activities, assistance services, end of life concerns for a close member of your family or a dear friend. Support team may include medical staff, health aides, spiritual advisor, or not. In rare instances, may include siblings, if you have them, but this is generally unlikely. Performance reviews, self-administered, usually daily, rewards, intangible. Occasional expressions of gratitude may be experienced. General sense of doing good with intermittent bouts of overwhelm and feelings of total inadequacy. The ideal candidate thrives on adversity, possesses an unending patience, diverse problem solving and communication skills, has the ability to sustain effort over the long term with possibly little evidence of progress and few signs of accomplishment, plus the recognition that this is an end of life engagement. Finally, there's an email to the job applicant. It says, "We are glad you volunteered for this position. Congratulations. Welcome to the hardest job you'll ever have."
I love that description. It really is so true. And it is also the reason that oftentimes people are not prepared for what they have to deal with. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about is some of the negative potential consequences and fallout from the job of being a caregiver. Because caregiver stress and burnout is a real thing. And even if you do everything right, um, it's something that you're subject to. I mean, self-care, which we will talk about at some point in time, is one of the things that we can do. But I really want to educate people about what they need to look for so that they can look at signs that, I may need to do something. I may need to get some help. I may need to have a break. So, but some of these, most people can say, well, I feel some of these things, but when you have a plethora of things, you need to start paying attention. So physical exhaustion, when you're feeling, constantly tired and drained and you don't have any energy, and even after you've had a good night's sleep and you're still, just tired, being emotionally exhausted and feeling overwhelmed. I mean, I get that all the time from people. I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day. I am just struggling. Little things that didn't used to bother me become huge. Sometimes people get detached from the caregiving role. They just feel like they're going through the motions and they're not emotionally connected. Increased irritability, losing your temper. I never lose my temper, but I lost my temper. I feel terrible. I said things I'm sorry about. So that kind of reaction is something that can happen often. Feeling more anxious and depressed, having a lot of worry and sadness and hopelessness, losing your own interest in activities, even if you had time to do them, is a big one. You can have problems with your sleep, sleeping too much, can't get to sleep. Your appetite changes, not eating well. You're, responsible for helping somebody else get their food and sustenance, but even you sometimes don't take the time to cook yourself a decent meal or even have a meal. You can get sick, getting frequent illnesses, and your immune system is weakened as a result of the constant stress. Not taking care of your personal needs, and going to your own doctor's appointments. You're so busy taking your family member to their doctor's appointments that you figure you just don't have time. Theirs are more important, and so you don't do it. And you don't do the things that bring you joy or relaxation either. So you have no way of shoring yourself up. If you're working, it can affect your job performance. or your ability to even be there, because sometimes you have to take your partner or your loved one to appointments, and so it takes time away from your day, as well as the phone calls that you have to make to all those medical professionals, and your anger and guilt. You may feel angry or blame yourself and others, um, and this can lead to, lots of emotional angst, and your loss of personal identity, especially if it's become a primary thing that you're doing in your life and you don't have other things. You lose your sense of identity um, outside of the caregiving role, and it can lead to a sense of purposelessness. Purposelessness. Here I go. So, if you have some one or two of those symptoms, it doesn't mean you're having burnout, but it's enough for you to pay attention and say, I don't want to go any further here. I know I'm feeling stressed. It's vital to take action so that you can do something to stop the slide into a place where, you get sick yourself, because that's the bottom line. A lot of caregivers end up getting sick themselves, and also, have their own health challenges that they have to deal with when their person may pass away. So lots of opportunities to learn here. And so Connie, perhaps you can talk a little bit about some small things that you know of that make a big difference.
I'd be happy to. And one thing, would you like me to talk about sort of getting ready to visit with the person you're caring for?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, okay. Because I think there's something, but I was nodding my head if you were watching to everything that Karen was just saying. In particular, one thing that she mentioned that leaps out at me is she said that you can become detached from the caregiving role. And I think especially, as Karen said, a lot of attention is placed on caring for people with dementia, because that has got to be one of the most challenging forms of caregiving, because you're not getting any feedback. Maybe the person has stopped talking. And I remember one story of a wonderful man who was taking care of his mother. He said she used to look like Ava Gardner. She used to be so beautiful. And he would come and he would see that her hair was groomed, and he would take her to dental appointments, and he would do everything that he thought she would like. And eventually she did stop speaking. And so he said, you do it because it's what you do. It's just what you do. And I think it's especially for long haul caregivers,
Mhm.
day after day, month after month, year after year. And as Karen said, you can become excuse me, detached from the role. Why did you start? You started it from an impulse of love for a spouse, for a parent, for a friend. And after a while, the daily grind can grind you down. And so I came up with this, and a lot of people have found it helpful as a way of sort of grounding yourself, centering yourself, each day before, or each time before you visit with the person you're taking care of. Because we all have, hopefully we have those good days, but as Karen said a minute ago, maybe yesterday you got angry and you feel bad. And one good thing about being a long haul caregiver is there's always another day to try to do it better. But if you're having one of those bad days and you're feeling as prickly as a cactus, and the minute you walk in and they say, I need more Kleenex, you're going to go, what? And this is not going to work. So, how to find a moment of calm and to get back in touch with those very impulses that led you to start on this caregiving journey. So, before you open the door to their bedroom, if it's in your house, or to the room in the assisted living or skilled nursing, wherever they may be, just stop and hit the pause button. Take a nice long deep breath and say, I'm here because it's about caregiving, C-A-R-E. The C stands for compassion. It literally means to suffer with. You're both going down this road together, and you're here to hold their hand. You may have, as we said earlier, a great relationship with your person, or maybe it's been difficult over the years. So the A is for admiration. Just for today, think about this. Maybe you actually do admire them, or at least some things about them. You're here to celebrate who they are, their strengths in facing this last big trial. You're here to tell them what a good job they're doing. So there's compassion, there's admiration. The R is for recognition. Some days they feel invisible. If they're able to tell you their stories and reminiscences, you're here to listen and encourage them. And if this is now beyond them, you're here just to be present, and in any way you can, to recognize with them that they have led a meaningful and beautiful life. And finally, the E is for embrace. You're here to embrace this experience for what it's teaching you and what it is allowing you to do. You're needed. You're here to lean in and embrace. It's probably a good thing. So with these thoughts in your head and in your heart, take another deep breath, knock on the door and say, hi, how are you today?
Well, that's lovely. And it reminds me of these little opportunities that sometimes can happen, and how you need to notice them and sometimes go with them. Because if it's a day they have a spark, or one of my clients told me about this wonderful story of when her mom, after she had been a long distance caregiver, and then she came to be close to her for the last number of months in caretaking, because she was constantly going back and forth between her home in Colorado and her mom in Illinois. She ended up going into hospice care. And she says when she started in, they got her into a whole new room, and they put on the music in the room. And she started to dance. Not the client, but my client started to dance. And she just felt so joyful. Her mother laughed and laughed and laughed, and she laughed with her mother. And it is one of the most valuable and most memorable experiences that she's ever had with her mother. And here it was, a time of transition. She was in a whole new place with new caregivers and everything else. And they both found joy and happiness and laughter. And any opportunity that you can do that, because a lot of times it's not scripted, it's not intended, you just can't always make it happen. Taking advantages of those opportunities, and being in a mindset to do that, if you take the time to, before you go into the room, to prepare yourself, I think you can be more open to see what could possibly happen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, and if I could build on that too, one thing that I found personally, and I've seen it in others, the caregiver is so wrapped up in all of the multiple tasks. Is when you go into the room, oh, there's a pill that felt rolled under the bed. Oh, okay. Now, what else do I need to do? I need to tick off, the doctor's appointment is coming up, and has the nurse come in, and have they gotten their insulin, or whatever it may be. And you don't sometimes have the chance chance to take that deep breath and to look for, as Karen says, those special moments. So it's very important. And here's one little tip. If you can, if there is some friend who has said, I would like to visit your spouse or your parent or whoever you're taking care of, take advantage of that. And often, so here's a little tip. Somebody said, well, how do I do that? Because the friends, they offer to come, but then they don't really come. If you go with them, if you bring them with you, sometimes that makes them, the friend, feel more comfortable. And so you can go about your managerial tasks, and then you say, here's, Priscilla, she's come to see you. She'd love to talk with you. You back up. And very often, I found this a lot. Suddenly, my mom would become charming mom. And so and would start telling stories because she knows I know the stories. She would tell the friend the stories. And now remember, the friend doesn't have emotional baggage. The friend is only coming for a few moments, is not as depleted and tired and sleepless and all of this and exhausted as Karen was so beautifully describing earlier. So one tip is you can broaden out this experience. It's good for you and it's good for the person you're caring for. Bring a friend.
Well, I think that's great. So, you were talking a little bit with me earlier about you've done a little bit of research on even just the little moments of self-care and the kinds of benefits you could have from that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I've actually been researching this stuff for probably about 3 years. And what I did come across, I was really interested in the fact that even 1 minute of some sort of a little bit of a timeout for you can be so effective. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, this can't possibly be true. But let me give you just a few mini citations. There's a meditation app called Headspace. Many of you may know it, maybe you use it. But here's what they say. They say it might surprise you to find that in 60 seconds, you can completely reset your mindset. And then Psychology Today says 1 minute of exercise can transform you and make you feel better immediately. I mean, it's sort of like, how could all this be true? Even the University of Michigan Health Service says 1 minute of tensing and relaxing your muscles, 1 minute of deep breathing, or visualizing a beautiful relaxation spot can reduce stress. And there have actually been a lot of studies also in the workplace where they looked at what they called micro breaks, lasting anywhere from a few seconds to several minutes, and they could reduce workplace stress. So why not micro breaks to reduce caregiver stress?
Well,
Go ahead.
those are all wonderful things. What else do you have on your list?
Okay, so if we've sort of established, go with us on this, that even a minute can be a good thing. Let me give you some of my favorite, and I sort of have this collection of these things. I keep learning about them day by day, and there's this sort of secret one that I want to add here. But we'll start out. So first of all is meditate, and there's a meditation app called Insight Timer. I personally love that one. They have over 25 different 1 minute guided meditations. So, I mean, the whole point is we know how stressed and overworked and overbooked your day is. See if you can't find this 1 minute. There's another meditation app called Calm. Maybe you use this one. It has meditations as short as 2 minutes. Here's another one. Just take a warm wash rag and hug it to your face. Soak your feet in warm water. Massage the palm of each hand. This just feels so good when you do that. Massage your feet. We can do all sorts of other activities. I've got a whole wonderful list of them here. Give me a minute and I'm going to grab a few more of them. I got.
Oh, I can give a few
Yeah,
while
you
you're
have.
looking at yours.
Well,
I'll
I
look at
find.
a few of
Yeah.
the ones that I have, because one of the things that you realize is that we both can come up with all these different ideas, but the reality is you've got to figure out what really is going to fit for you. And not everything is going to work. So I want to give you permission to try some things, see what ones you're willing to do, or that feels like it's a fit for you. See if it works, see if it makes a difference, and if not, you try something else. Because between the two of us, we were able to come up with so many different choices out there, and one of the things that I wanted to say is, and the thing that I love to do the most for me is to go out in the sun and to be outside. And the whole idea of being in nature is one of the most healing things that we can do. Doing it by ourselves, going for a walk out, even if it is a 5-minute walk, even if it is the walk going to your mailbox, doing a walk if you have an animal. Actually, petting your animal is one of the other things that I think research shows that it calms our stress levels in a huge way. Not everyone can take care of an animal, so or they may not even be able to have an animal where they are. But one of the reasons they do bring animals into hospitals and nursing homes as well is because they recognize the power of these animals to connect with people. Even someone with dementia who may be combative can still relate to a dog. So we need to be very cognizant of that. I apologize. With that, I'm going to put myself on mute.
And you know what? While Karen deals with her support dog, let me mention a few others. Um, one of the things you want to try to see if you can slip these things into your regular day. So how about when you're taking a shower, just spend an extra minute or maybe even 5 extra minutes just for you. It's very empowering to do that. Um, a couple other things in the morning, sleep in. Okay, just for 1 minute, the alarm goes off. Maybe you stretch it to an extra 5 or 10 minutes. You just sort of sneak in that, hey, I can be in control at least of these few minutes. Um, I love flowers. Cutting some flowers and arranging them in a vase. I mean, it's no big deal. It takes no time, but it's so love. There you go. Oh, there Karen's
Yep.
Karen's flowers. Yep. Let's see. Working on an art project. I bet there are things that I know. This wonderful woman. She is a great quilter. She's been taking care of a husband with dementia. I said, "Have you been doing any quilting?" She said, "Oh no, I can't get to it." Just pick it up and do a couple of stitches. As Karen said earlier, the whole point is small stuff. You're not going to finish the quilt today. You're not going to do a whole section of it. Just do a few stitches. Or maybe even just put aside some new materials that you will be adding to the quilt when you have time. Little things like that. Pick up your knitting or crocheting. And then here's another one. Play a solo game like Wordle or a solitaire game. There's so many of these. Quick story. A woman, dear friend of mine, she was taking care of first her father and then her mother. And her mother was on a very steep decline. And so one day, after a very hard day of caregiving, she came back and she took out her iPad and she started to play some word games. And then she went on to some other kinds of games that they have. And she said, I didn't realize how much time had gone by. I wasn't accomplishing anything. And then she said, no, wait a minute. I think I really was. She was taking a real time out. She wasn't paying attention to all of the responsibilities and the sorrow and the stress and the strain. Playing games on your iPad, playing hooky to do that is just wonderful. And let me give you a tip. Here's a tip about when you really want the break to work. I have a little kitchen timer. Maybe you have a timer on your Apple Watch or whatever kind of timer you've got. Set a timer for whatever number of minutes you want, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Now you don't have to keep track of time, and it's up to you to do anything you want. It's a great way to take a break. And then when the timer goes off, okay, now you'll get back into harness. But for a few moments, you've been in another place.
I think those are all great. One of the things that I will also check with people on is how do they organize their day? Because, we assume that, people have systems in place. And, they come from a work world where they do oftentimes have systems in place. And yet here you are in your home world and you've got this job that you're doing and you don't have those SOPs that you might have had in the work world. And you have to create your own. And I think one of the things that always has amazed, especially my retired people who said, they're retired. So they kind of gave up their calendar. And now all of a sudden, I suggest to them, well, perhaps you need to reinstitute that calendar and you need
Yes.
to put in some systems for you so that you have some structure and in your life so you feel like and you also have an accounting of all the stuff that you do, because just like Connie started out in the beginning when she talked about the job, it when you sit down and you put a list of all the different things that you would do in your day and you look at that and you have it scheduled in and you say, oh my God, no wonder why I'm so exhausted. Look at all I've done and that I had to do today in order just to get through the day. And having that structure and routine is important for you as well as for your loved one, knowing what to expect and doing it. And therefore, if they move to a new situation, either to an assisted living or to a nursing home, or sometimes when they get reintroduced after maybe a hospitalization, you sometimes get out of your routine and then you have to remember to get back into your routine, do the things that you did before so that you can put some sense of control and normalcy in your life. Those are things that I know I've helped clients with because they're both out of sorts when their routine is broken.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, and let me pick up on that. I think one of the best tricks to do that I learned from somebody was this was a fellow who had brought his mother into his home. So he was now her caregiver in the home, and it was definitely a 24/7 thing. He did things for himself. That break moment was first thing in the morning. And it was his exercise. So he'd get up extra early and he would get his workout done. So now he knew before she woke up and the day became the roller coaster that it usually was, he had already done that little bit of self-care. Could I also mention, I sort of said I had a surprise technique. May I share that?
yes.
It's really wonderful. I do it every day. It's sometimes called the pencil trick, because here's the deal. You can take a pen or a pencil. If I'm going to demonstrate in a moment, if you put it in your mouth, you are sort of mimicking a smile. And here's the point. You don't have to actually use a pen or pencil. You can actually just smile. And here's the trick about it. it's somewhat controversial, but there are a lot of psychologists who call it the facial feedback theory of emotion. And the idea is that the facial expression can affect the circuitry of the brain, so that smiling can actually make you feel happier. Whether you use a pen or a pencil or you just lift the corners of your mouth, it just might boost your mood and make you feel a little less stressed. I invite you, if you're watching this, takes way less than a minute. Just smile. Your brain will thank you for it.
Well, it sounds like that would be a good segue into the next one that I wanted to talk a little bit about, and that is mindset work. And because when you think about it, you are doing this job that is from your heart. Sometimes it goes a little bit off kilter. And so that's why I say it's really the best of times and the worst of times, because a lot of times you are at your best self, and sometimes you feel like you get to be your worst self. And so we sometimes pay attention to what is called, at least I call it, the itty bitty shitty committee in your head. And it's that negative self-talk that you do and say, sometimes you say, I'm just doing a terrible job. I don't know
Right.
if I can do this another day. I am just ready to tear my hair out. They don't have the medication at Walgreens, and he needs to get a patch tomorrow. How am I, all the things that really come up. And so the piece around how do you shift your mindset from
Mhm.
that negative place to something more positive. I mean, so doing your little thing, that might be one thing that
One
could
thing.
work. We also say, sometimes we say, fake it until you make it, and that kind of fits into me, using the smile. The other thing is, have a list of either affirmations or positive things that you can say to yourself to remind yourself, I'm doing the best job possible. I love him even though I'm angry at him right now. I am um, I am a caring, loving woman or man, and I am doing what I'm meant to do right now, and I will do it in the best of my abilities. And some days I'm just not going to have a good day because I'm human, and so are they. They're going to have their bad days too. And so forgiveness of self and others is an important piece that we have to recognize, because um, it's not always going to go well. And that is also why having a support system, developing your own support community is
Mhm.
important. And so, therefore, that will lead me into maybe some of the thoughts you have about support groups, because you've had personal experiences with support groups, and both personally and also you've led some. So, could you share a little bit about that?
Sure. The main point of this is don't fly solo. I think so many of us feel isolated, and it can be very isolating because all you're doing is taking care of this person. You have no time to go be with friends and my goodness, to go out to see a movie with somebody, you would feel so guilty, and so on. So it tends to be very isolating. And yeah, I started some support groups. I'm actually now facilitating a support group, and I've joined a lot of them to sort of see how they all work. Here's the deal. What people have told me, some of the therapists, social workers have said, sometimes all a caregiver needed to do was see another face on a Zoom call. And we should say a lot of these support groups are virtual. So you don't have to get dressed up. You don't have to leave the house. They are easy to find. Here's the thing. Let's get right to this. If you are thinking, even want to test one out, I think take them for a test drive. Google support groups near me. It's all you have to do, and there will be a huge list. There are all sorts of groups, and especially for different kinds of folks too. Groups for various medical and health issues, they'll focus on those. Groups for working daughters. There's a great group around the country called Daughterhood Circles. They're not only for women, but they're largely, because we know most caregivers tend to be women, that they have a whole bunch of support groups in different states under these daughterhood circles. There are support groups for the LGBTQ plus community, caregivers for wounded veterans, for children, for spouses, for older parents. So take these for a test drive, try them out. And one tip I would give you, it particularly applies to situations if you're caring for somebody with dementia. You may find that you want a group where the people are just one step ahead of you, because as we know, that's a long and very evolving situation. And you want to perhaps learn from people who are dealing with the next step that you may be facing. Definitely look for a support group. It doesn't mean that you're weak or inadequate. By the way, we all feel inadequate. All caregivers feel inadequate. And maybe that's the way I can sort of wrap this up. The good thing about being in a support group is you will find that you are not the only one who got angry yesterday and feels bad, who feels inadequate, who feels stressed and tired. It will help you realize that what you're going through is actually not weird or crazy. It is normal. Lots of other people are going through it. So I really think I'm finding the support group that I'm facilitating now. At first, here's just a quick personal story. I went in thinking, what can I tell them? What can I share? And I realized they just need to talk. You just need to share. You just need, and if you don't feel like sharing, that's okay too. But you just need to be with a bunch of people who are going through what you're going through. It's a real club. You didn't want to join it. Nobody else knows what it's like to be a caregiver. You need to be among other caregivers. It really will help you. So, as I say, don't fly solo. Let some other caregivers be your co-pilots.
And that is a great place for us to end. So I am so thankful, Connie, that you were able to come with me today and participate and give your words of wisdom, and to let people know that there is help out there. There's support groups. There are there's hospice. There's a lot of different ways to get help for your situation. There are therapists and counselors, coaches. There are many people out there that you can reach out to if a group is not your thing. I encourage my clients to do both, but not everyone is of that mind. So do what works, and we are hopeful that you will get some good tips from what we did today, and we will see you next time. Thank you. Ciao.
And thank you.